Hey man, how's it going?
It's good. There you go. Oh, there you go. Okay, now we got you. How are things in Tennessee today?
Doing very well. You may not know we refurbished an old farmhouse on Nisha's grandfather's farm, and we're in the process of practicing what we preach. We're going to start growing some quail, and we already have chickens. We're going to get a couple of pigs, get some sheep, maybe even get some cattle eventually. So we are busy producing our own proper human diet here on OB Farms.
Well, that's good. That's good to hear, Ken. I'm actually moving out to the country myself here in a few months, so I'll be out on not quite enough, probably not quite as much space as you, but about 5 acres out in northwest, up in Washington State for a while. So, um, good for you. I think that's the producing your own food. I hope it doesn't come to that, to where you're kind of forced to do that because regulations to try to do that. I don't know if you saw this, and I'm going to say the introductions. Ken, everybody knows who you are, so we'll just kind of dispense with that. But I know you're pretty active on social media, as I am, and I just saw today that Krispy Kreme Donuts is offering a free donut if you show proof of vaccination. And this is supposed to run through the end of the year. So I don't know how they, maybe they keep track of it somehow, but there is a potential you just get a free donut every day for the rest of the year by being vaccinated. I think that pretty much sums up our response to this whole entire thing. It's the same thing. It's always more drugs, more drugs, more drugs. Let's just totally disregard actually getting people healthier. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that I saw the Krispy Kreme ad on Twitter this morning, and people retweeting it with the obvious, stunning cognitive dissonance that's behind a tweet such as that. In a country where over 80% of adults have at least one, if not more, markers of metabolic disease, that's what you're going to do. That's your social solution. Is you're going to give everybody a free donut for, I guess, for life if they can present some vaccine card. I think the bigger evidence of cognitive dissonance is the fact that no one in the public health space is calling this out except for people in the keto community and the carnivore community. Where's the Harvard School of Public Health? I mean, they just don't have an opinion on that? Where's Duke and UCLA? Where are these guys at? Why is there not one single? Where's Walter Willett? I mean, Walter Willett and you and I, we agree on several things, and one is that you shouldn't eat a donut every day. We all three of us agree on that. Where's he at saying, hey, that's maybe not the best solution? How about you give everybody a cup of free coffee? How about that? And the reason they're not doing that is because they'd lose too much money, because there's actually real ingredients in coffee that aren't subsidized as heavily as the sugar and the wheat and the vegetable oil that's in the donut. Basically, Krispy Kreme can give away donuts all day because they're essentially free to them. The raw ingredients are, because of government subsidy. And I think that's the bigger problem. And that's what everybody in the carnivore and the ketogenic community, that's what we're battling. And I liken it to this big army of little Davids. That's who we are. And we're fighting against all these giant Goliaths. And I think the army of Davids is going to win eventually, but it's going to take a while. And I think that the grassroots movement of the keto and carnivore communities, it's literally what's going to save humanity from the terrible dietary advice we've been given for the last few decades.
I've said that. Recently I've been more. I've been talking about this all along, but I think people are kind of sort of waking up. This is, this concept of being on offense rather than on defense. Like I said, we're always defending a ketogenic diet, defending eating meat. We just, I'm sure you're aware that the governor of Colorado, made March 20th a vegan day, and I obviously disagree with that and think it's stupid, but we actually got some. Several states, I think Wyoming, Nebraska, Montana, Iowa, and I think Kansas and Oklahoma all came out, their governors all came out and said, hey, we support meat. We want you to eat more meat type of stuff. So that's a little bit of that. But I mean, still, I think that doesn't go near far enough. I mean, I think there's still legislation out there that is being considered to limit, restrict all these types of things. And I just think, instead of passively standing by and waiting for that to happen, we just have to go on the offense more.
I totally agree. And I think that's what that's what we do every day. We're on the offense. We're actually saying, hey, eating the food that human beings have eaten for 250,000 years, it didn't magically become dangerous and toxic and bad and cancer causing in the last 30 years. That didn't happen. Human DNA has not evolved in the last 30 years. There's no way to make the argument that meat and eggs and real whole dairy is somehow bad or dangerous or unhealthy for human beings. I think in the Colorado State House, there's actually a bill right now that's trying to drastically change animal husbandry. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sean, but I think it's the Colorado House where the rep is.
It's called the PAWS Act, and what they want to do is they want to redefine artificial insemination as animal sexual molestation to make that illegal. They also want to dramatically change the age of slaughter for cattle to minimum 5 years, which would basically, triple the cost for most ranchers, because usually they're slaughtered between 18 months and 2.5 years typically. And so that would basically drive many ranchers completely out of business because they wouldn't be able to do that, or the prices would triple, which would make it unavailable to many people. So that's being proposed by two animal activists that have access to the Colorado license. Jared Polis, the governor, appointed an animal activist on the state veterinarian board. So she's helping to redefine what animal cruelty is, and so that's certainly concerning. So it's out there. I think that you talk about all the Goliaths. I mean, the Goliaths versus the little Davids. I mean, there's studies that have come out. I mean, we've seen them. Journal of American College of Cardiology this last year, saturated fat from meat, eggs, dairy, chocolate, things like that are not harmful. I mean, there's plenty of scientific research that would back up this position, and yet it still persists. And what do you think the motivation is for this sort of nonsense to continue to persist in the mainstream?
Well, I think the underlying motivation is that these people want us to eat a plant-based diet. And as well as I do that the average American already eats a plant-based diet. 70 to 80% of what they consume on a daily basis, that is people who aren't woke to the keto and carnivore movement, they're eating 70 or 80% plant-based already. I think the bill about how animal husbandry in the Colorado House is very telling, and I think it's going to really create a storm, and it should. But that's also why Nisha and I moved out of the city back to the farm. And I would encourage everyone to start growing some percentage of your food at your home. And even if that's selling your pet cockatiels and buying 3 or 4 Coturnix quail to put in that cage. They're very quiet. They're not any more messy than 2 cockatiels. They're probably cheaper than the cockatiels. And then you're going to be getting 3 to 4 little quail eggs every single day. Whereas with the cockatiels, all you're getting to do is, change the newspaper. Even if you live in a tiny apartment, that's an option. In this same tiny apartment, you could have a small garden on your balcony where you're growing some nutrient-dense food that doesn't cause inflammation in your body that you enjoy eating. Even if it's just 1% of your food, that's a start. That's a beginning. No matter where you live right now, you can start doing that on your balcony, in your backyard. Even if you're on a 1/4-acre city lot, you can start to grow something. You can have 2 hens in the backyard because hens don't crow. Your neighbors won't know if you have a fence, right? And then you can be eating nutrient-dense, ancestrally appropriate food, at least to some degree. But I think the big Goliaths at the top, big food, big pharma, big government, they want you to eat a plant-based diet because that's where their biggest profit model is. They're not going to make a 3,000% markup if they sell you a dozen eggs. They're maybe going to make a 50% markup. But if they can sell you some kind of processed food that's shelf stable for 2 years, that's made of sugar, grains, and vegetable oils, they'll make 3,000% profit on that. And they can afford to have all the television commercials and online advertising, and it's shelf stable for 2 or 3 years. So they really don't have any loss or shrinkage at all. That's their model. That's their profit model. And let's be clear, this is not a model for your health. They literally do not give a damn about your long-term health, your health span, your lifespan. They care about their profit model because that's what their board of directors and their shareholders, that's who they're beholden to. So if they can make a product, because it's made in a factory, this is not real food. If they can make that and make a 3,000% markup, and this is very important, Shawn, and it doesn't kill you quickly, because that would be considered poisoning you, right? So they don't want to do that because their bean counters and their attorneys have said, hey, you got to get the trans fats out of this because this is killing people. Well, so sugar and grains and vegetable oils, they don't kill people quickly. That's true. They kill people slowly and insidiously over 20, 30, 40 years. And so the bean counters and the attorneys have said, yeah, that's a cool model. Let's do that. It'll be decades before the class action lawsuit comes. And God, I pray every day for that class action lawsuit, Shawn, so we could have discovery and find out just exactly what Kellogg's does know, what Pepsi-Cola, Coca-Cola, Mondelez, General Mills, what do they really know about human nutrition? Because I guarantee you, they know that the crap food that they're putting on grocery store shelves is slowly killing people and making them sick and making them suffer. I think they know that at a scientific level. And when we do have that lawsuit and we're able to get discovery and get access to all of their research documents for the last 20, 30 years, I think people's eyes are going to be opened that all of these huge multinational corporations who pretend to be your friends in advertising, right? Have a Coke and a smile, McDonald's, that's family and friends. I think they all know that they're slowly poisoning people, but the profit model is just so seductive, they can't say no to it.
Yeah, whenever I see plant-based, some processed food with a little leaf on the front advertising plant-based products or plant-based proteins, I just immediately translate that as to be cheap and profitable. I mean, I think that's, if you just substitute that in there and you think cheap ingredients, high profitability, that's the motivation, at least clearly. Now, I think, back to the, and I talk about supporting, local ranchers, if you have the capacity to grow your own, that's great too. Of course, there's a bit of learning curve and work that goes into that. But I continue to see, threats to these guys. These ranchers are just going to throw in the towel because, I mean, they're struggling to, the system, even within the beef industry, or the animal agriculture industry, there are forces that want to continue to corporatize, centralize, and globalize, the food supply, even in that system. And so we have, obviously Bill Gates buying up a bunch of farmland. We have big corporations buying up land. We have the Chinese buying up half of Africa. We have, potential legislation being proposed that will potentially basically usurp some of the land from these guys, and whether they do it voluntarily or not through taxing, inheritance taxes, death taxes, where they can no longer afford the ranch, they have to sell it. Federal state, they're going to reclaim 30% of all lands as federal protected lands. That means it'll encompass some farmland, and they may potentially do this through water taxes or some other ways to sort of impact ability to get water. So we've got a long way to go outside of just, hey, support your local rancher, buy more meat, eggs, dairy, poultry, so on and so forth. So it is far more, they've got more tricks up their sleeves than just what the obvious stuff is. And so we're going to, like I said, I know people talk about, they're going to take away my gun or they're going to take away my ribeye out of my cold dead hand. But I think those things, it's not that they're going to take them away from you. They're just not going to be available for you. And this may not eventuate itself fully until our children are older. But I know you've got several children and a new little baby out there. And so, it's something that, we have to kind of do that. Do you have any concerns about that stuff for your kiddos' sort of future?
Yeah, that's why I do this every day, Shawn. I just posted on Instagram. That's one of my main whys, is because Beckett's 18 months old. He's been a meat eater since he put his first food in his mouth. There has never been a grain or a sugar that has passed his lips since he's been on this earth. And as long as Nisha and I are in charge of his nutrition, there never will be. He's never had one drop of vegetable oil in his body. His height is off the curve. His weight is perfect. His mental development is just crazy. Sometimes he'll come out with something, and Nisha and I just look at each other like, what the hell did this baby just say? Or what did he just figure out? And so I think that I'm very worried about this happening. And I think that certain powers that be hope that this viral situation that we're in right now would give them the traction to really make this transition or this reset proceed much faster than they had hoped that it would in the past. I think we're seeing a lot of backlash to that, though. I think we're seeing a lot of people checking out of the system and saying, yeah, I'm not for all that. I'm not for any changes like that. And I think you're right. I think that the way that they're going to limit our access to water and meat and real food, and they're just not going to come and take it, because obviously that's going to, there would be people who would have a significant problem with that. I think attrition is one of their main weapons. They're just going to make it harder. They're going to tax it more as older ranchers retire. All the taxes involved and all the legislation involved, they don't want that life for their children. So they're going to be like, no, son, don't. You're not going to take over the family ranch. You're going to go to college and learn how to be a bean counter or something, because that's where the money's at. That's why I think this really, everybody who listens to me and listens to you, we really need to start to think about, how can I grow this myself? How can I raise this myself? Do I have enough land in the backyard? Can I have one lamb back there and then use a regional local slaughterhouse when it's time to harvest that? Where's the local slaughterhouse, processing house? Do I have one near me? Have you guys all Googled that and found your local processing factory for locally grown meat? Do you have a local rancher? If you don't know, then you're a little bit part of the problem, aren't you? Because every time you buy something, you're voting with your dollars. And if you're buying local meat and local eggs and local produce, you're actually voting to support that, to help that to grow and become larger. But every time you buy something from Amazon that's processed food, or from your local grocery, you're also voting. And you're also giving these Goliaths more money to actually stomp their gigantic boot on our face and say, no, you can't have real ancestral food. You've got to eat this processed crap.
Yeah, Ken, I commend the education and the promotion of being more independent, but at the same time, I think we can't just hide in the woods. I mean, we can't just, because I hear people say, oh, I'm just going to go hunt and hide. That's not going to get it done either, because I can tell you, I think it's more important now that you participate, you try to influence the rest of it, because like I said, it may be about you, but it's also about your children and other people around you. And I think it's kind of becomes almost a duty to stay in the fight, don't give up, and continue to
absolutely. I totally agree. And
every lever.
I don't advocate anybody checking out or clocking out. That's not my goal at all. I want people to become more active, not necessarily at the national level, because I think most national politics is theater and bluster, but at your local, at your county level, and at your state level, just like this bill that's before the Colorado House right now. I mean, there are 2 or 3 cities in Colorado that are quite on board with a plant-based diet, I would say, but I would guess that the majority of Colorado citizens are 100% pro-meat and pro-local farmer and local rancher. These people need to get mad, and they need to get very, very active at the local and the state level. I really think you're probably spinning your wheels if you try to have any kind of effect at the national, federal, or global level. You need to work. Who's your state rep? Who's your state senator? You don't know? Why don't you know? You should probably know that, and you should probably be sending them an email a month or a phone call a month saying, hey, I was just looking in Tennessee last night. In Tennessee, as rural as it is, it's illegal to sell raw dairy products, either in a store or from your own farm. Some states, it's completely legal to sell raw dairy in grocery stores. In some states, it's only legal to sell it from your farm or ranch. But in Tennessee, it's illegal. You can't do it at all. You can do like a ranch share where somebody owns a percentage of a cow, and then they can have raw dairy from that, because you have to own at least a part of the cow before it's legal in the state of Tennessee to buy raw dairy. And I don't know that. I assume Tennessee had more common sense laws than that. I'm going to immediately reach out to my state senator and my state representative and say, hey, why do we have this law? We got dairy farms, both cattle and goats all over Tennessee. Why would you not want to share this wonderful nutrition with the citizens of Tennessee? Everybody needs to look up, is raw dairy legal in your state? If you don't know, you should know. Is it legal for a rancher in your state to sell from farm to customer in your state? Most states it is. Some states it's not legal. You can't do that. It has to go through a USDA processing facility, even to sell it from your own farm or ranch. Those things have got to change. And when we start doing things like that, when we start protecting rainfall, there are a few cities and counties in America where it is illegal to catch rain, literally illegal. And you're like, what? Yeah, that's true. There are many states and cities where it's illegal to sell raw dairy. It's illegal to sell from ranchers to direct to consumer. Those things need to change. And as we change those things in our local community and in our state communities, that's going to have a ripple effect through the entire economy, because all of a sudden these new sources are going to start cropping up. When I win and it's legal to sell raw dairy from ranch to customer, that's going to create how many new dairy farms in Tennessee, Sean? And that thing can be replicated in every single state. If you have a stupid state law, there's nothing easier to change than a state law. If you're trying to change a national law, good luck. If you got millions of dollars and lots of connections, you might be able to do that. But a state law, it doesn't take much to get something before a state house for a vote. I mean, you can just look at this idiotic bill that's in front of the state house in Colorado, and I predict it'll be shot down. I don't think it'll pass there. But the very fact that they had the gall to even promote that bill in a state house, I mean, that just shows you how far off the reservation these people are, how removed they are from the ancestral human diet and real human nutrition. They don't understand it at all. And they don't care to understand it. They're just trying to save the sweet, cuddly animals. And I get the ethical argument for veganism. I get it, but I don't agree with it. And I think that as more and more people reach voting age and start to have an impact in their community, if we're not educating them, if they're not going, who's this crazy ShawnBaker guy? Man, look at his muscles. I mean, he eats nothing but meat. It can't be that bad for you. I mean, according to most healthcare authorities and experts and nutrition gurus, you and I should both be crippled with gout and arthritis, right? We shouldn't even be able to move because our gout and arthritis is so bad. We should be morbidly obese and both be type 2 diabetic because meat causes diabetes. That's what the average 20-something, 30-something, that's what they believe. And so that's why I think it's so very important for everyone listening to this to share videos like this and to share your YouTube and my YouTube, and to more importantly, perhaps even more importantly, to share their own health transformation story. To say, look, I used to eat this and I looked like this and felt like this. Now I eat this and I feel like this and look like this. I don't think there's anything more powerful than the transformation story, the redemption story, and the David and Goliath analogy, because that's literally what we're living on a daily basis. But that's also very seductive and very sexy and very attention grabbing. When you see a story like that, it's like almost genetic in us to be interested in that story, that transformation. I mean, why do you think Weight Watchers and Nutrisystem, why do you think they have those before and after pictures on their television commercials and their magazine ads? It's because that grabs people's eye. They're like, whoa, what the heck? I look like that. I want to look like that. That's why they use that. That's why the redemption story is as old as humanity itself. It never dies because we love a good redemption story. We love an underdog story. So you guys out there, I don't want you to think for 1 second you're too little, you're too insignificant. That's not true at all. You've got friends who watch you, family who watches you, neighbors who check out your Facebook page. When they see you before and after, or when they see you doing CrossFit or lifting kettlebells or doing any of this stuff, and they're like, that's that same guy down the street that used to ride his scooter down to the mailbox. He's now doing this. Wow, what the heck is he doing? That kind of stuff is so powerful, and it really cannot be tried by the glass. They can't get rid of that because these people know you. They know how sick you used to be, and now they can see how healthy you are. There's no amount of throttling or blocking or deleting or canceling that's going to ever make those redemption and rejuvenation stories less powerful. So you got to share those stories.
Yeah, it's something that I quickly realized that, studies are great. Most people get bored by them. Most people don't understand them. Most people don't understand the nuance behind them, or even to realize that many of these studies, the conclusions don't even match the data. So I think, you can't deny, someone walks in 100 pounds lighter. I mean, that there's something that happened. I mean, it's obviously going on. I think your point about local politics, I hear people bemoaning the fact that the vice president was talking about, minimizing meat and stuff like that. And again, I see that as frustrating, but again, how do you do anything about it? I agree. The local level is a huge place to start. I think, sort of emerging markets, it tickles me that we now have carnivore friendly products. And, 5 years ago, no one even heard of that. Now we have manufacturers out there that are willing to invest their own personal capital and set up a business around this model. So we're developing this market, and I think it's got a lot of up growth potential. And so I think it's a huge market there. We've got a state representative coming on here, I think in a couple of weeks, Mary Francis from Michigan. She's very much aligned, and she's very frustrated by the fact that there's been no discussion about metabolic health in this whole pandemic situation. There's, she sits on a state committee where they're in charge of that, and they don't even bring up that topic. And so I think it's kind of frustrating. Right. Kim, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't you have a period of time where you dabbled in politics a little bit locally? Was that am I imagining that, or did you have something?
Yeah, I was actually. I was a county commissioner here in Benton County for 4 years, and I was actually chairman of the county commission for 3 of those 4 years. And much to Nisha's chagrin, I freaking loved my time in local politics. I would totally do it again. And I think she might be a little more on board with it now, but she hates the politics. And so I haven't spoken of it. Don't tell her I said this, but I love local politics, and I've always been involved. And I think everybody out there, is there a seat on the city council that you can make a run for? What about the county commission? I mean, you don't have to hold an elected office that's a full-time job to have a say-so in local politics. Same goes for a state representative. It's a 2-year term in most states, or a state senate, usually 6 years. You could totally make a run for that. And even if you didn't win, your platform of metabolic health and local ranching and local farming and let's protect our local people. I think that a lot of us in this community, we think, well, it's not going to get any real traction out there. I think you may be wrong about that. I think that may get a lot more traction now than you ever thought it would in the past. Don't forget, Donald Trump was elected president. And I mean, all the polls the day before he had a 20% chance of winning. And I'm not saying I'm pro-Trump or anti-Trump. I don't dabble in national politics. I'm just saying everybody who was somebody who knew what was going to happen said that he was going to get his ass beat, and he didn't. So don't think that you're by definition going to get your ass beat because you're talking about things that are not talked about in the mainstream media. I think people all over this country, and indeed all over the world, are hungry for common sense. They're hungry for something that makes sense, that's going to help support their local farmers and local ranchers and protect their water supply and protect their right to defend themselves. If you don't think people are hungry for that, I think you're wrong.
One thing, and I certainly applaud Nina Teichels for her efforts. I see her through her Nutrition Coalition rallying for the last, 5 or 6 years or longer, trying to change the national U.S. dietary guidelines. And the cynic in me says, good luck. It's the fix is in, it's already bought and paid for, and you may be spinning your wheels, but at least she has the platform is influencing some people's mind, even though it may not be the dietary committee that just does what they want to do, what they get paid to do essentially. But do you think, we have a national dietary guidelines, which, you and I both largely disagree with. Is there a room to have a local state level guideline or a countywide guideline? Is there, can we say I'm in the small county of blah, blah, Tennessee, let's do this as our guideline and then see how we fare relative to the rest of the country? Do you think there's any way that could be done? I just think that'd be an interesting experiment.
No, I think that's an excellent experiment. The problem is that in order for hospitals and nursing homes and schools and daycares and prisons to get their federal dollars, they have to feed their inmates or their patients or their students. They have to feed them by the national guidelines. We live in a very tiny community here, and our local school, they had a couple of matriarchs in the community who worked at the cafeteria, and they would not feed the kids that crap. Okay. They would literally cook real food for the children. And the school, somebody reported this to some authority, and the school got in trouble and was threatened that they would have their federal dollars pulled if they didn't stop this immediately and feed the children according to the federal guidelines. And so the school that was going out of its way, spending extra money and extra time trying to cook real food for the students, almost lost their federal funding, and they had to cease and desist, and they had to feed the children off the Cisco truck, which is the local regional distributor of processed crap food, and they had to feed the kids that. And these two ladies that were brokenhearted because they were doing this out of the goodness of their heart, trying to help these children, many of whom are very, very under the poverty level. They were trying to help them so they could get better grades and so they could grow and develop and not have as many cavities in their teeth and have a better chance at life. And they were shut down because some dumbass reported this, and they had to stop cooking real food for the kids. So, but I agree with you. I think we definitely should start looking at state nutrition guidelines. But until we're able to somehow opt out of the federal guidelines, I don't see it going that far. And back to Nina. Nina and I are good friends. But I've told her this numerous times. I love you, girl. I love what you're doing. But I'm not holding my breath till you have any effect. That's just not going to work that way. This is a grassroots movement where people, just like you, one by one, we are rediscovering what a proper human diet is. And then we improve our health with that. And then we teach our friends. And then we hopefully teach our children. And we teach our neighbors and our circle of relatives and friends. That's how this is going to explode and move. It's not going to come from the top down because the top is controlled by the Goliaths. They're the ones who have the lobbyists. I don't have a lobbyist, and I don't think you do either, Shawn. I can't afford to pay a lobbyist $800,000 a year to talk to, U.S. senators and representatives and all of the committees that make the guidelines. I can't do that, but I can talk to people on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and say, hey, actually, this is dumb. Actually, this is the proper human diet. You should try it for 90 days and see what happens.
Yeah, I don't have a lobbyist in my hat, but it's interesting. We're going to have a lobbyist, the U.S. Cattlemen's Association's federal Washington lobbyist on. We're going to talk with her about that sort of process because like I said, I think it's something we need to all learn and understand. I've always traditionally not really been interested in politics just because I didn't have much faith in many of the politicians, and generally it was it was a national level type thing. I just didn't find that there was much difference between what was going on there. Interestingly, when I went to high school, I went to high school with this guy named Rand Paul, who's a Kentucky senator right now, and he went to my high school, and his brother was 1 year ahead of me, and his dad, Ron Paul, was, he was a congressman in our town, and he ended up having his knees replaced when I was doing my residency, and he came to us to get his knees replaced. So I met him there, and thought that was pretty interesting. But I wonder, with regard to, you're talking about the school system being shut down. I mean, if the federal guidelines say, you got to provide some skim milk and, whatever, 6 servings of grain and, yada, yada, yada. Could you still not have that available for the kids that want to do that and then have these other foods available? I wonder if that's a, those foods are available. The food pyramid's available, but here's what we recommend. I wonder if there's a way around that, kind of to fulfill the spirit of the intent, actually affect something differently.
Yeah, I think you're a very common sense guy, Shawn, much like I am. And so, there's lots of different ways to skin a cat, so to speak. And I think that absolutely is a ninja level way of doing this, is lay all the crap food out there and then say, oh, we also have, hamburgers and cheese and butter over here if you want that. But here's the official lunch. I think it's also a great time for every parent to pack a lunch for their child. There are more and more woke, low carb, keto, carnivore friendly doctors now. In some schools, you need a note from your doctor saying that your child needs special food to even pack a lunch anymore. And if you didn't know that, in some cities, that's absolutely true. You can't just send your kid lunch. You have to have a doctor's note or a dietitian's note. So, but you can watch my YouTube video about how to find a low carb doctor near you. That doctor would be happy to sign a note saying that your child needs special food, because every child does need special food that is not on the My Plate guidelines. We all do. And back to your point about the Cattlemen's Association having lobbyists, that's an excellent point. Nisha and I don't own any cattle yet. Okay, it's probably going to be 3 or 4 years before we can build up the soil in our fields right now, because they were monocropped for years, soybean and corn and other stuff. The soil's been destroyed. So we're going to start out with very small ruminants like sheep to try to build the soil back. But once the soil and the sod is deep enough and dense enough, we're going to introduce some cattle. But I have already joined the Tennessee Cattlemen's Association, even though it's going to be 3 or 4 or 5 years before I own a single cow. The Tennessee Cattlemen's Association, they do have lobbyists, and they do talk to state reps and state senators. You see what I'm saying? So everybody, you need to join the Poultry Association or the Cattlemen's Association, some ruminant association, even if you don't own any animals yet, because when we conglomerate our resources like that, then those guys can hire a lobbyist and actually have a meaningful effect, definitely at the state level and perhaps at the federal level as well.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the way it works. I mean, I can't directly communicate with the president of the United States, but my state representative can interact with the U.S. senator, and the U.S. senator can reach the, whatever. And it goes up the chain, but you have to let people know you're there. And I think, right. It's easy to get frustrated, but there are mechanisms in place if we're willing to, pursue them. And I think that's a little bit of a, discovery on our part. I mean, it's kind of like, what you learn in whatever 8th grade about government. I don't think people understand beyond that. And I think it's something that figuring how to do that. What is, so like you said, learn who your local representative. You think that's the best place to start? What about on the city or the county level? Is that also, can you make some changes there?
Yeah, perhaps at the city and county level, you could make some beginning changes, but definitely at the state level, that's when you can start to make really impactful changes. State reps and state senators, if one person calls them, they're going to be like, oh, okay. But if they get 50 telephone calls or 50 emails, they're always thinking about reelection, and that's their pressure point, and that's their Achilles heel is they'll get sent home if they don't do what a majority of the people who vote in their district say to do. And so when they start getting hundreds of phone calls or hundreds of emails, they can't ignore that, or that would be political suicide. So that's why, I mean, we talk about this all the time, and people are like, I don't know. But yeah, you can have a huge impact at your local level. I don't know if we could have much meaningful impact on nutrition guidelines at the county level, but you could absolutely have impact on farming and ranching and water collection and firearms. There are many county commissions across the country who have voted and said, hey, our sheriff is not going to enforce unconstitutional executive orders. And there have even been some state houses who have said, we will not allow our state law enforcement to enforce unconstitutional executive orders. That's a huge deal. And when you've got a state ready to make a stand like that about one issue, that state's probably also ready to make a stand about another issue as well after you educate them about that issue and say, hey, it's actually in the best interest of the citizens of your state to eat a proper human diet. Our state cost for diabetes and obesity and fatty liver and premature death and premature dementia and all these things, our state costs are going to go way down the more real food people in this state eat. And when you start talking about dollars and cents, and when you start talking about re-election, that's when politicians listen.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the voter is at the inconvenient sort of situation that the politicians have to deal with. They still have to be responsive to the voters. I mean, I think, people see where some of their things may be directed by lobbyists and special interest groups and corporation that help a lot of them get elected. But at the end of the day, the voters ultimately have a say and have to respond to them, even if it's to, I think this thing with the Colorado, as you pointed out, it probably won't pass. This nuttiness about calling animal or artificial insemination, sexual molestation of animals, and stuff, it probably won't pass. But what I think it does is it sort of provides an inroad to get something else to pass that's less atrocious. And I think this is what they do. They propose these crazy things, and then they hope for compromise. And so instead of moving it 50 yards, they move it 10 yards. And I'm of the opinion of don't give an inch when it comes to compromising human nutrition. I think people that are out there, well, let them have their vegan day or what, I'm just like, no, don't give them an inch. That's what I think is going on. Do you see that happening in politics where they ask for a mile so they can get 100 yards? Is that something they typically do?
Yeah. And there's two strategies behind that. And this is actually a well-known political ploy and a ploy in debates on any issue. There's a box of acceptable solutions for any problem that you're talking about, right? And so it ranges from completely plausible and implementable to just crazy, kooky, aliens. And so when you introduce something like the Colorado bill, what you're actually doing, you have no hope that bill is going to pass. But by introducing that bill, you do two things. First of all, you introduce the area of compromise, right? And so even though this is never going to pass, this is where the debate currently is. You're going to move the debate a little towards your end of the spectrum. And so have a compromise somewhere here, which is still less good than having it here, but it's not what you asked for. But then secondly, you actually make it socially acceptable to talk about such idiocy. And I think we're seeing this a lot more, in the cancel culture and all this other stuff. We're used to, can you imagine, Sean, back in the 70s and 80s, if you had said in the public forum some of the idiotic stuff that is said in all seriousness on Twitter now by people with blue check marks, right? I mean, socially acceptable people are saying things now that would have just got you laughed off the stage back in the 80s and 90s. People would have just literally written you off as a kook and never listened to you again about any subject. Now it's socially acceptable to say those things, and that's because they use this ploy to move the debate slowly towards their end of the spectrum. And they get you to compromise a little bit, then a little more, then a little more, and all of a sudden you're way over here saying, well, artificial insemination isn't, animal molestation, of course, but we do need to tighten up the regulations, and we need to have a new fee, and we need to have a new license. And so basically what you do is you're hurting the small ranchers again because they can't afford that $2,000 license. And so they just say to hell with it and quit doing it. They can't afford all the extra fees, all the extra inspections. So to make sure that you're not molesting the animals when you're really pretending to artificially inseminate them, That's how this works. And so that's why we need people on the common sense end of the spectrum, the real food end of the spectrum. They need to have a voice at the state house and the state senate and at the county level as well, saying, this is ignorance. This is not even something that adults should be talking about. You're going to have to feed a cow for 3 or 4 years before you can even harvest that animal. What in the world that's lunacy. And so they can push the box of discussion back the way it should go, instead of these people. I mean, if this Colorado House bill, if it passes, then oh my God, that's really bad. But if it even gets debated seriously in the state house there, you see what it's doing, Shawn? It's moving the discussion, and it's making it okay to talk about lunacy in an august situation in front of a state senate. You can actually have a meaningful debate about such foolish things. Then that you're making it socially acceptable to say foolish things. And we need people on the common sense end of the spectrum saying, this is stupid bullshit. This shouldn't even be discussed in a public forum, much less in a state house.
You know, the interesting thing to me is, you know, and I've been someone who's traveled around the world. I've been, you know, all over different parts of the world. You know, I've been on just about, I think I've been on every continent. I've spent time with all kinds of different people. And I am just discovering that there's a whole entire, there's old Beckett, there's an entire world of people that are really, really sort of have different ways of thinking than I do, which I think it's good to know that. But at the same time, yeah, I agree that some of the, and some people would call that progress. I mean, some people say, well, you're old fashioned, it's progress, and we should accept all levels of what you and I would consider just complete lunacy. You know, I think, and there's a lot of topics we could talk about, but I think, you know, some of it, you know, some people agree with, some people don't. You know, like I said, I tend to, I think that, you know, part of the problem is, and we're seeing this kind of spiral out of control, is as our nutrition gets worse, you know, I think we see that directly impacting things like mental health. And as that gets worse, we just have a society that starts to crumble. And I think we have to fix nutrition. That's primary is one.
Yeah, well, I totally agree. And this is one of my whys. I want you guys to see Beckett. He wanted to come say hi. This guy has never had one drop of vegetable oil in his life. He's never had one flake of any grain in his life. He's never eaten a product that has added sugar. The closest he's ever come to eating sugar is strawberries, right? Tell him about strawberries. You know strawberry? We're out right now, so this is a little bit torture. We got to go to the grocery. But so he's never even eaten that stuff, and he's off the charts in development. Okay, he's already got all 24 of his baby teeth at 18 months, and that's because he's been chewing on bones and chewing on meat since he was 4 months old, 4.5 months old. That's when he had his first bite of solid food, and his first bite of solid food was meat. I gave him a rib bone that I had pretty much cleaned up, and he took care of the rest of it. When he was done with that rib bone, he threw it in the floor, and the dog didn't even want it because he had cleaned that bone so good. That's what we got to do, first of all, with ourselves, then with our children, our grandchildren. Then we got to start happening to our neighbors and our extended family. That's how all this is going to work. To your point about this foolishness. So another great argument that they love to make is that it's archaic to eat meat and to slaughter animals. That's archaic. We're wanting to be new and modern. And here's what we got to tease out. I love modern technology. I love it. I'm filming this on an iPhone, I don't know, 11, 12, whatever the hell the newest thing is. I've got all kinds of electronics all around me. I love technology. But when it comes to the care and feeding of any mammal, you have to feed that mammal a species appropriate diet, or that mammal will get sick, it will suffer, and it will die prematurely. So I'm all for having technology and modern things. I love it. Okay, I got a brand new Dodge truck that's got all the bells and whistles. I love that stuff. But when it comes to breathing air, I have to breathe ancestral air. Or I will, if I say, oh, you need this modern air that's full of carbon monoxide and full of, pollutants, that's going to make me sick. I need ancestrally appropriate air. When it comes to drinking water, I need to drink real appropriate water. I don't need to drink water with digoxin and all the rocket fuel propellants and the microplastics in it. Modern technologically advanced water is not good for me. I need ancient water. That's what I need to be drinking. And the same thing goes with food. Yes, I love modern things, but when it comes to feeding me and my son and my family and my community, it has to be ancestrally appropriate, species-specific foods. I have not evolved. I am still the same as my ancestors were 250,000 years ago. And I have to eat their diets or I will get sick, I will suffer, and I will die prematurely with all of the billions of healthcare expenses that brings about and the huge carbon footprint of the healthcare industry as well. And so, yes, I love technology and modern things, but we cannot pretend that we can modernize food or modernize air or modernize water. You can't do that. You can't modernize human beings so they don't need sleep anymore. I would love it if you could, but you can't do that. Sleep is ancestrally appropriate. You have to have that. You can't, there's not a pill for that. There's no way to get around that technologically speaking. The same goes for our diet as well.
Ken, you know, you're saying that as someone, you know, you and I are roughly the same age. I can't remember, I might be a year or so older than you, I can't remember, but we didn't discover this till later in life. I mean, you freely admit, you know, back 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you were obese and, you know, having struggle and eating the crap and didn't know any better as a physician, as was I. And most of us don't really wake up until it affects our own health. Even as physicians, even somebody who spends their whole life dedicated to helping other people with health, we can't even, you know, take the stick out, you know, the beam out of our own eye to you know, type of thing. So, but the question is, I mean, honestly, I think if we're going to impact this, we have to reach these kids, these young adults early, so they don't have to go through and develop type 2 diabetes or depression or autoimmune issues. And the message of, you know, common sense and that stuff isn't very fun. It's not sexy. It doesn't appeal to the 15 to 24 demographic. And so I mean, I'm trying to figure out a way to, how do we impact these people? How do we make this message that's going to impact those people positive? Have you given any thought to that or any thoughts on that?
Well, I think you're doing that in a way with your shock value, because I know some things you post, you do it intentionally to be shocking and flamboyant. And I think that's going to reach a younger demographic, even if it reaches them only by they're being shocked and appalled by what this old man just said about it's okay to eat meat. But I think that's meaningful, because remember the box of conversation I talked about earlier. When you blast out something on Instagram or Twitter that's shocking to the 15 to 25-year-olds, you're actually moving the conversation a little bit. Even though they think that you're crazy and deluded and you should probably be put in prison and definitely should be canceled for what you're saying, they just had a little mini conversation about what your point was, didn't they? And so even though unconsciously that moved their conversation comfort point, it moved it a little bit. And so I think there's a meaningful use for stuff like that. I think that when a 15 to 25-year-old gets fat enough and sick enough, I think then they are ripe. And it's unfortunate that they have to get fat enough and sick enough to go, God bless America, nothing I'm doing is working. I feel like crap, but I'm doing everything the dietitian and doctor told me to do, and I'm following, you know, Dr. Greger and all these guys, and they're telling me to do this, but I'm getting sicker and sicker. My psoriasis is worse. My joints ache, my gut. Let's not even talk about my gut symptoms. Unfortunately, I think for many, many people, they have to reach that tipping point of being unhealthy enough, uncomfortable enough that they say, okay, I'm going to have to try something else because this obviously isn't working. I wish there was a magic way that we could reach people before they became metabolically ill and obese and, you know, had the worst acne of anybody in their school. I wish we could reach them sooner, but I can't think of a way to do it. If anybody's got an idea, put it in the comments below, because I mean, I would love to reach kids in a sexy, modern way where they were like, oh, Dr. Berry's, what is it, cool or rad or what? I don't even know. Nisha, what's the latest thing for cool? We don't know. We're too old. But I wish there was a way to do that. But outside of, getting a TV show, I don't know how to do that. But all we can do is when they're ready to listen, that's when you talk and that's when you teach. And it doesn't have to come from me or Shawn. It can come from you, the listener. You can, when they're sick enough and fat enough and miserable enough, they'll look at you and go, God, Dad, Mom, Uncle, Aunt, you changed. You were used to be so fat and miserable. We wanted you to go outside and play soccer and you wouldn't even get out of the recliner. Now you're outrunning me. What am I doing wrong? And how did you correct your health? Then they're ready to listen. That's the only way I know to do it.
Well, I mean, obviously, as much as I, have a difference of opinion with the vegans, they are reaching a young demographic. We see all these kids that are sort of, that are influenced by this. So I think we have to sort of figure out what they're doing and just do it better. And I think that's the thing. Like I said, fight fire with fire. Don't bring a gun to it. Don't bring a knife to a gunfight type of thing. And I think that's what we have to do. Ken, I unfortunately have to run here in about 5 minutes, but I wanted to tell me what's the latest thing going on with you. I know you got the homestead, the developing homestead, but is there anything else going on with you with regard to proper human diet or within your sort of, general thing? I know you have your book that's been out for a while, but anything new with Ken Berry?
Well, I've got the book, Lies My Doctor Told Me, that's available everywhere. And I've got a new book I'm working on called The Proper Human Diet that I've been working on for a while, but I'm really getting serious about it now. I'm getting my office set up here at the farm, or maybe I'm going to call it the ranch. That sounds sexier, doesn't it? Ranch versus farm. I don't know. But the Proper Human Diet, I'm going to be working on that in earnest now. I'm still making 2 or 3 new YouTube videos every week on my YouTube channel. I'm always slapping down big food, big pharma, or big vegan on Twitter. So if you're in a bad mood, you want to, get in a fight, then join me and Shawn on Twitter. I'm always posting loving, helpful things on Facebook and Instagram. I'm busy trying to reach people and help them understand that they can improve their health. They can reverse chronic health diseases that their doctor said they're stuck with. That's not true. You can actually reverse that, or at least improve it. That's what I do every single day. I've got legal pads all over my desk full of video ideas. How can I help the most people? How can I have the biggest impact? How can I reach people that I've never reached before? That's what I sit here and do all day when I'm not outside sweating in the sun. I love doing that. And I feel like as a doctor, I am having a much bigger impact on people's health by doing this than I am by seeing 30 or 40 people in a clinic every day. I think I'm able to help many, many more people and help the health of the entire country and the entire planet by doing what I do. And I was called at a very early age to help sick people and to help people get healthier and to get well and to get better. And I'm still doing that. I'm just doing it in a different modality right now.
Amen, Ken. Thank you for that. And your YouTube channel is this, what is it? Is it Ken Berry or Dr. Ken Berry? What's the YouTube channel name? Because I know that's where you have the biggest audience, I believe.
If you search whatever medical issue you've got, whatever skin condition, whatever gut condition, just go to YouTube and search Dr. Berry and then type in whatever condition you've got. I've probably got a video about that on YouTube.
All right, perfect. Ken, thank you so much. Congratulations on the new farm. Look forward to hearing more about it as you go. I might have to hit you up for some pointers if I ever go down that road, which I hope I can. And anyway, thanks so much for being a great contributor to this space, and we need more people like you. Thanks, Ken. All right, guys.
Thanks for having me, Shawn. I'll see you next time.
Okay, we got another one at 1 o'clock today, guys, if you want to come back. So we'll take care, and everybody see you guys later. Bye-bye now.